Welcome to Identiverse 2025. We're here recording live from the Cyberist TV studio on the expo floor at the Mandalay Bay Convention Center in Las Vegas. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me for this interview is Sagi Rodin, CEO of FrontEgg. Welcome, Sagi.
Thank you for having me.
To be honest, FrontEgg, I'm not very familiar with the company, so maybe give me a little bit of background on the company and what you guys do.
Yeah, so we're a 5-year-old company based in Mountain View, California and Tel Aviv, Israel. The company is basically solving the customer identity challenge for SaaS companies. So you would have modern companies, different shapes and sizes using us, so they don't have to deal with the risks of security within their customer identity and user management, scaling it up, and developing all the features that are basically table stakes today in any modern SaaS application.
So it's a B2B product that helps one of those Bs with their B2C.
Exactly, or B2B, yeah. So
or
basically
B2B.
We're either B2B2B or B2B2C.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Hope everybody else got it, I got it.
Yeah, it will take a minute.
Yeah. So what are, I think, thanks partly to AI, but just the fact that, just the nature of some of the attacks that we're seeing, I think it is an inflection point for identity at this point. Apparently, identity security is a new term, which is baffling to me because I've dealt with identity, from the very beginning of my career in the early 2000s. But yeah, I guess a lot of people working in identity, it wasn't as well paired with security there. So what are some of the trends you're seeing come out of this? Like in, your 5-year-old company, have those trends significantly changed even since you guys got started 5 years ago?
Yeah, significantly changed. I think that even before going to AI, there are a few trends that are happening that are interesting to note. First of all is the user experience, because we used to think about customer identity as just logging in, getting the token, validating it, expiring it once it's off, and that's it. Today, I think that most of the users are just used to a different type of authentication. You go to any app today, you're used to Face ID. My kid, he plays a lot of video games, and he will basically tell me, "Dad, give me your face so I can log in into my game."
Yeah.
He wouldn't ask for a password, right? And,
right.
And this is just a new experience kind of that we see all over, and that makes a lot of companies kind of be aware of that. Product managers that want to make the experience of their users more smooth are becoming more aware, embedding that obviously into their roadmaps. The second thing that is happening, and I think that this is partially because of the AI trend, is that I think that moat is becoming harder to get, right? This differentiation of your product is something that nobody can copy, because features are being built so fast these days through cursor and stuff like that.
Yeah, vibing.
Exactly, so a lot of companies need to kind of reinvent themselves, and this happens by finding new go-to-markets. A lot of the companies we see that are developing second and third products to provide more value. And I think that this is interesting because the identity becoming more complex. Now you need to manage identity across multiple applications, several types of users and accounts, and need to worry about their user experience, the security behind it, making everything scalable, which is also becoming the kind of responsibility for the identity providers to make it easier for the vendors to go through this transition.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they look at an application, a web application, they don't realize how many components are integrated within that, right? And buried within that. So diving into some of these trends more deeply. So, one thing that seems very like it could get very complicated very quickly is agentic. I think at one point we were thinking, okay, within the enterprise, I'm going to have this one agent that knows everything, the super employee that sees and touches everything, and that seemed like a terrible idea. because obviously that's immediately going to be like as a pen tester or an attacker, like my one-stop shop for everything.
Yeah.
It's going to be really abused by employees and attackers maybe. And now, it makes a lot more sense to have specialized agents that do different things and interact with different APIs, with different services and things like that. And you can already see how, even with consumer apps, this would make a lot of sense, right? Use cases like maybe I want all my banking information, my transactions to be available to my CPA, but my CPA is using some kind of agent-based platform for this to look for common mistakes and pitfalls and things like that. So how big of a challenge is this going to be? Like, it seems like we haven't even figured out if an AI agent is going to be handled more like a person or more like a machine identity, right?
Yeah, it's maybe somewhere in the middle, right? So we kind of think about it not as either a human being or a machine, because it's kind of in the middle. It has its own kind of characteristics, and I think that agentic is super interesting. On the one hand, we see that organizations are starting to build agents into their roadmaps. It's still not very production grade, but we do see a lot of our customers that we spoke to planning to release sort of an agent even this year. So obviously when you build an agent like that, you need to help users authenticate into this agent in a native way, right? Like just as you authenticate into ChatGPT or stuff like that. But the other thing which is kind of unique in that area is the ability to allow the agents to connect to different services and different kind of third-party applications within the ecosystem. And here it becomes very tricky because on the one hand, you got new standards like MCP rising. On the other hand, we all know that security is not the strongest part there. So we definitely see that we need to help there. And the second thing is to enable your products to be accessed and operated by agents, which is another task. So those two, the inbound aspect and the outbound aspects, are super interesting and definitely changing the way identity is kind of perceived as only a SaaS thing.
Yeah, right. Like even agents that maybe use your identity as well. We're seeing robotic automation. This kind of move the mouse cursor, right? Because not all these services, like especially like if I think travel planning, that kind of thing. There's a lot of very old UIs, that these companies aren't really inclined to update, I guess. Trip it and things like that. Like there's no API. They weren't built with an API. Very, very old code base, and so you need something that actually logs in as you and acts as you and has to click the interface and click checkboxes and click save and wait a certain number of seconds for the next page to load. So that seems like even more complexity there, right?
It's complex. I think that there are headless browsers today and companies like that deal with those things to enable agents to operate. But I think also that this level of freedom that you just described introduces a few more challenges, right? Because even if I kind of allow the end user to connect through this prompt or chat or whatever UX is there, an agent, to these third-party services, right? What is going to prevent the user to basically write, I don't know, like delete all of the records in my Salesforce, right? Because the connection was made. So something needs to monitor and prevent this type of kind of activities. And I think that here is again the challenge of identity companies to really manage those entitlements and permissions and role management in a rather different ways, because as you mentioned, it's not like API. So you either can access that or you're blocked. It's somewhere in the middle with a lot of shades. And I think that here it becomes super interesting for companies like us to enable this natural language interaction.
Yeah, like just checking into my hotel here at Mandalay Bay, trying to use the mobile check-in completely failed for me because my credit card rejected it, and it takes it so long to send me was this really you? Yes or no? And then I say yes, and it says, okay, for 1 hour you can try the transaction again. But at that point I hadn't even gotten the error message or the email from Mandalay Bay.
Yeah.
So I've already tried 4 or 5 times by the time I get that first email from that first time I tried. So, it seems like latency, like again, going back to the trend of user experience you're talking about, that's super important, because when I get that email, I'm like, did that come from the 4th try or the first try or the second? I'm very confused at this point. I just give up and I go to the front desk and I just let them handle it. And so they've got all these signs like mobile login, but the moment a credit card doesn't work, it all falls apart.
Yeah, I agree. It's just like buying a Tesla is starting your journey with a flat tire, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the authentication part is the onboarding. That's your first step into the application, into the hotel, as you mentioned. It's kind of the
Sorry,
first...
Mandalay, don't kick me out of my room.
It's the first experience that you get, and it's really important to nail that experience. And I think that we're seeing also a trend, and I haven't spoken about it, that it's not only the security, the engineers that care. Suddenly you get go-to-market people that care, right? The marketing manager or the CMO even, they would care a lot about how this experience and getting through the door into the product looks like. It affects the sign-up rates, right? The conversion rates and stuff like that. You would get the security people to care because there's features like, enabling SSO connections and stuff like that, which are also important to sell the product.
Yeah.
So we kind of believe, it's written on our booth, identity for the whole team, not just as a slogan, because we actually see that there's a lot of team members that use our product behind the scenes, even support, and not only developers or not even only security.
Yeah, and we've seen that shift, the design of a lot of these products over the years. Like I remember for marketing teams, everybody had to share the Twitter password at one point, right? There wasn't any kind of workflow or way for a company social account to be shared and used by multiple people. And then we started seeing companies pop up to solve that problem, Buffer and Owler and a lot of these. And just the other day, Buffer finally sent me something that said, okay, you can now at companies or people, because it doesn't work when you're doing it from another platform, because it needs to populate that list of, okay, which company are you talking about, which person are you talking about? And it's that user experience has been pretty bad for a while.
Yeah, when customer identity was introduced as a thing about 10, 13 years ago as a service, it was mainly aiming at consumer applications. And it was pretty easy, right? Like you sign up with a username and password, and basically you're in, then it throws you out, you have to re-log in.
You need a password reset process.
Exactly, multi-factor was introduced, but when more B2B companies started to rise, basically the whole challenge became more complicated, because now a user is not a user on his own, he's a user within an organization, and he has roles within that organization. And then you would see a user from an MSSP or whatever that needs to access several organizations with different roles and permissions. And it became more complicated. We are the one who brought kind of this concept of B2B identity about 5.5 years ago. And since then, we see that the largest growth in the popularity of usage in customer identity becomes in those complex challenges, when there's several customers, several types of applications. You'll get a lot of types of users that belong to those organizations. You have different levels of organizations. If a company acquires a company, right, you inherit all of their tree of sub-organizations, and you need to manage all of that. And that's complex, and that's even before agents are kind of starting to participate in this game as well, which we already start to see.
It seems your example about the face authentication and your kid, it makes me think we will have a period, or maybe it is right now, where there's a generation that's never used passwords and a generation that's never used anything but passwords existing at the same amount of time. And I've seen people who are uncomfortable with passkeys because it doesn't feel secure, because you just click log in and it happens. They don't have to provide anything. And then on the other side, this expectation that everything's going to be fingerprint or Face ID or, something like completely frictionless.
Yes, I agree. I think that we will see new methods arising. We will see a lot of security coming into place because with the AI, the attack surface is obviously becoming more obvious.
Yeah.
It's easier to attack the applications or user app to attack a certain company, kind of use you as a supply chain attack vector. And the authentication methods will have to be much better. Today we're seeing a lot of device flow authentication that is happening. So basically when you need to authenticate, you just kind of scan a QR code and you're in, which is great. We see obviously passkeys, as you mentioned, and a lot of other things.
Yeah.
And I think that as the technology evolves, we will see even more sophisticated methods that will make the experience much better.
Yeah, that's excited to see that.
Yeah, but also will make the CISOs not sleep at night, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that, it used to kind of be considered that customer identity security, as you mentioned, it's an engineering thing or a product thing. But today we actually see that companies are kind of expecting security teams and CISOs to be responsible for that as well. So a lot of those CISOs want control. They want to set up their own policies, regardless of what the product supports or not.
Yeah.
So we're trying to enable them kind of an easy way to get their level of support without overstepping maybe the product and the engineering and live side by side together with mutual goal at the end of the day.
Yeah, tough balance.
Yeah, it is.
Well, thank you so much, Sagi, for joining me today. Great conversation. I enjoyed it. And to find out more about FrontEgg, you can visit securityweekly.com/FrontEggIDV. For all Identiverse 2025 coverage, you can visit securityweekly.com/IDV. Thanks again, Sagi.
Thank you so much.